Before the video game, before the pinball machine, before the arcade cabinet with the joystick and the quarter slot, there was the penny arcade. It stood on boardwalks and downtown streets in nearly every American city for the better part of a century. A storefront full of machines and noise, and the particular thrill of putting a coin in something and seeing what happened next. Then it was gone, replaced by something faster and louder, and eventually by something you did not even have to leave the house for. Most people today have never been inside one, but for 2 or 3 generations of Americans, it was one of the first places they ever felt the specific pull of a game. Picture a Saturday afternoon in 1948. You're 12 years old and you've got a dime in your pocket, which is enough. The arcade is 3 blocks from the bus stop, sandwiched between a tailor and a lunch counter on a street that gets busy on weekends. The front is open to the sidewalk in warm weather, and you can hear it before you see it. A mechanical piano plays something fast, the clatter of steel balls, a recorded voice crackling out of a wooden cabinet, the bell of a machine paying out its tickets. You go in. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust. The room is long and narrow, lit by the glow of the machines themselves, each one a different shape and a different promise. Along the left wall, a row of mutoscopes, iron viewers on pedestals with a crank on the side. You put in a penny, turn the handle, and a flipbook of photographs spins past the eyepiece, a boxing match, a comedy bit, a dancer moving in a loop of 40 frames. Along the right wall, strength testers and fortune tellers, and a glass case where a mechanical gypsy in a turban will read your future for a cent. In the back, the newer machines. Pinball, not yet the sleek electrified version that will come later, but an early model, a wooden playfield with metal pins and a spring plunger. You've gotten good at it. You know how to put a little English on the ball at the right moment. You spend your dime in 20 minutes and walk out into the afternoon feeling like something happened, though you couldn't say exactly what. The penny arcade had its roots in the 1880s, when 2 technologies arrived in America at nearly the same moment and found each other almost immediately. The first was the phonograph. Thomas Edison unveiled it in 1877, and by the late 1880s, coin-operated versions were appearing in hotels and train stations, a nickel in the slot buying you 1 minute of tinny recorded music through a rubber earpiece. People lined up to use them. The novelty of a machine that could reproduce a human voice was enough to hold a crowd. The second was the kinetoscope, Edison's early motion picture viewer, introduced in 1894. Like the phonograph parlors, kinetoscope parlors charged a coin per machine per viewing. You bent over a wooden cabinet, looked through a small eyepiece, and watched a few seconds of moving images, a sneeze, a bodybuilder flexing, 2 men in top hats doing a comedy routine. Each machine showed something different. You moved from one to the next, a coin at a time, assembling a few minutes of spectacle out of individual moments. Those parlors were the direct ancestors of the penny arcade. By the early 1900s, entrepreneurs had recognized that people would pay small amounts repeatedly for brief mechanical entertainments, and that the right collection of machines in the right location could generate steady income from a stream of curious customers. The format standardized quickly. A storefront, a collection of coin-operated machines covering a range of experiences, and a location with high foot traffic. Boardwalks were ideal. Amusement parks, downtown commercial streets, anywhere that people moved through in numbers and had a few minutes and a few coins to spare. The machines themselves were ingenious in the way that early technology is always ingenious, because the constraints were so severe. Everything had to work mechanically, triggered by a coin, requiring no attendant, producing an experience complete enough to feel worth the penny. Mutoscopes showed flip card films. Strength testers measured your grip. Electric shock machines let you hold two handles and see how much current you could take, which was apparently something people wanted to know. Fortune-telling machines dispensed printed cards with your fate typed on them. Shooting galleries used pneumatic rifles aimed at moving targets. Each machine was a self-contained world, a small transaction between a person and a mechanism, lasting 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and leaving you ready to try the next one. The penny arcade thrived through the first half of the 20th century for the same reason the lunch counter and the shoe shine stand thrived. It was embedded in daily pedestrian life. People walked past it on their way to other things and ducked in. It required no planning, no reservation, no particular occasion. You needed a few coins, a few minutes, and the willingness to be briefly entertained by something mechanical. For a country that was still working out its relationship to technology, still finding novelty in machines that could do things humans could not, the arcade supplied a kind of wonder that was available to almost everyone. It was also democratic in the way that cheap public entertainments tend to be. A penny was a penny. The machine did not care who you were. The son of a factory worker and the son of a bank manager stood next to each other at the same mutoscope and saw the same flickering images. That kind of shared experience, available to anyone with a coin, was not nothing. It was part of what made the arcade a genuine public space, rather than simply a commercial one. The machines evolved continuously. Pinball arrived in the early 1930s, crude at first, but immediately popular. Early pinball was a purely passive experience. You launched the ball and watched it find its own way down the playfield. Flippers did not arrive until 1947, and with them came the possibility of skill, of influencing the outcome, of getting genuinely better at something mechanical. That shift changed the nature of the arcade in a fundamental way. Before flippers, the machines were novelties. After flippers, they were games in a fuller sense. Something you could practice. Something you could master. Something worth coming back for. The trouble came from several directions at once, as it usually does when something disappears. The first was moral. Pinball had a complicated relationship with American civic authority, almost from the moment it appeared. Cities including New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles banned it outright in the early 1940s, classifying it as a game of chance rather than skill, and associating it with gambling and juvenile delinquency. The bans lasted in some cities for decades. New York City did not lift its pinball prohibition until 1976, when a player named Roger Sharp demonstrated to the city council that the game required skill by calling his shots on a live machine during the hearing. But the association between arcades and moral hazard followed the industry for years and made the penny arcade a target for civic reformers who saw it as a place where children were being corrupted by idleness and low entertainment. The second pressure was economic. The penny that gave the arcade its name became a problem as inflation eroded its value. By the 1940s, most machines had already moved to nickels. By the 1960s, they were using dimes and quarters. Each increase in the price of play narrowed the casual audience, the person who ducked in with loose change and spent 20 minutes without much thought. The arcade was becoming a destination rather than an incidental stop, and that changed the economics and the culture of the place at the same time. The third and most decisive force was television. When television arrived in American homes in the late 1940s and spread rapidly through the 1950s, it did something the penny arcade had never faced before. It brought the entertainment inside. You did not need to leave the house. You did not need coins. You sat in your living room and the screen came to you. The novelty that had drawn people into the arcade, moving images and recorded sound, something mechanical producing something spectacular, was now available at home for free, in greater quantity, every evening. The boardwalk arcades survived longer than the downtown ones, sustained by tourist traffic and the particular atmosphere of the shore. The amusement park arcades held on as well, embedded in a larger entertainment experience that justified the trip. But the neighborhood penny arcade, the storefront on the commercial street that had thrived on foot traffic and loose change, began disappearing through the 1950s and was largely gone by the 1960s. What replaced it, eventually, was the video arcade. The first commercially successful video game, Pong, arrived in 1972. By the late 1970s, video arcade cabinets were appearing in pizza restaurants, bowling alleys, convenience stores, and dedicated arcade spaces that drew teenagers the way the penny arcade had drawn their grandparents. Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong were a new generation of machines, a new culture built around them, and a new set of skills to develop and master. But the video arcade carried something forward from the penny arcade, even as it transformed it. The coin, the machine, the particular concentration of standing in front of something mechanical and trying to bend it to your will. The social experience of watching someone else play, of waiting your turn, of the brief, wordless community that forms around a good game in a public space. Those things were older than the video game. They went back to the mutoscope and the pinball table and the penny in the slot. The video arcade itself didn't last. Home consoles arrived, and then personal computers, and then the internet, each one pulling the experience further inward, further from the shared public space, and closer to the solitary screen. By the 1990s, the video arcade was in decline. By the 2000s, most were gone. What the penny arcade represented, in its original form, was something genuinely new in American life. A public space organized entirely around play, not around commerce or worship or civic function, but around the simple experience of being briefly, cheaply, mechanically delighted. That was new. Before the arcade, that kind of public leisure did not really exist in that form. You went downtown to shop, to work, or to conduct business. The penny arcade said you could also go downtown to play, for a penny, for 20 minutes, and that this was a reasonable and legitimate thing to do with an afternoon. That permission mattered. It normalized leisure as something ordinary people were entitled to. Not just the wealthy, not just on holidays, but on a Tuesday, with a dime in your pocket, because the machines were there, and the afternoon was long enough. The machines are mostly gone now. A few survive in museums and private collections, restored to working order by people who understand what they are and what they meant. The boardwalk arcades still exist in a handful of places, tourist attractions now more than genuine neighborhood institutions. And in certain bars and restaurants, a vintage pinball machine stands against the wall, quarters on the glass, waiting for the next player. When you put your quarter in and pull the plunger back, you're doing something people have been doing for 140 years. Putting a coin in a machine and seeing what happens next. The machine has changed completely. The impulse has not changed at all. If you remember a penny arcade or an early arcade of any kind, whether the boardwalk, the pizza place, or the bowling alley with a Pac-Man cabinet in the corner, leave a comment below. Tell us where it was and what you remember playing. Those memories are more specific than people realize, and we would like to hear them. If this is the kind of history that matters to you, subscribing helps this channel keep going. Every video, we look at another piece of American daily life that quietly changed or disappeared, And we try to understand not just what it was, but what it meant while it was still there.